Today's broadcast is about the COO Forum and is a 2021 Q4 public forum. I'm pleased to be joined today by Josh Reneker, who is our Global Chapter Director for the COO Forum, James Beck, a member from Silicon Valley, Maria Jones, our Atlanta Chapter Director, Chris O'Rourke, who is the Director of the Washington, D.C. and New York City chapters, and I am Director of the Tampa Bay chapter. The COO Forum is a professional development association of second-in-command executives, whether they're chief operating officers, operating CFOs, general managers, divisional presidents, operating CIOs, or executive vice presidents. The global website at COOforum.com describes the organization as such. Our goals are to provide a collaborative, peer-learning forum of chief operating officers and other second-in-command executives. We want to expand individual members' professional development, to develop and share COO-specific best practices, connect to the greater second-in-command community, broaden understanding and awareness throughout the greater business community of the second command and its crucial role. We are truly a global community of peers, both inside and outside of official events. Our meetings are for members only or prospective members who have been invited. And very importantly, executive sessions are completely confidential so our members can privately discuss challenges they face and get feedback from their peers. So, let's join the 2021 Q4 Public Forum. Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we're here to conduct an open discussion on some of the top issues from 2021 and learn what you and your chapter members are saying. We're going to run this as a typical format for a chapter meeting. So let's start by going around the room. How about you, Chris? Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Chris O'Rourke. I am the chapter director of the New York City and Washington, D.C. chapters of the COO Forum.
Josh, how about you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Josh Reneker, Chief Operating Officer of Energy Access here in Indianapolis. We are a battery charger and power management systems design and manufacturing company. And I'm also the chapter director for the COO Forum Global Chapter.
Thank you. Maria?
Hi, everyone. I am Maria Jones. I am the chapter director for the Atlanta chapter of the COO Forum. I also am founder of Nerdy Industry, a business dedicated to being the operations advisory firm for all startups and budding entrepreneurs.
James, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm James Beck, COO of New View Capital, a venture capital firm in Burlingame, California. I am not a chapter leader or anything along those lines, but I am a member of the Silicon Valley chapter and look forward to today's session.
And I'm Tracy Jefferson. I am director of the Tampa Bay chapter and have been involved for a couple of years and do a lot of work around the COO Forum, entrepreneurial operating system, and rocket fuel. So let's start off talking about one of the great nightmares I think we hear a lot in the news about, and I know it has impacted at least some of us directly, which is the supply chain. A lot of businesses are being plagued by supply chain problems. So I'm curious, what are you seeing, hearing, what's happening to you, and what do you see in 2022?
I'm happy to jump in on that one. Yeah, supply chain. What a fun world we live in. So, what we've seen being in manufacturing and electronics manufacturing, obviously, this is probably the biggest impacted industry. We saw some pretty major disruptions, even starting basically as the pandemic hit in 2020. And that's only continued to get worse kind of through 2021. We started to see prices go way up in just transportation costs. And then we also started to see lead times with components and sub-assemblies and those kind of things really start to be extended. So far, the longest lead time I've seen was 72 weeks. on a component. Like, how is that even real? So yeah, I mean, and what we've done is really just leverage relationships. Having true transparency with not only our customers, but our entire global supply chain, so that we have real understanding and real knowledge of where we are with any of the at-risk components, and where we are with inventory levels and all those kind of things in real time, because we focus so much on the relationship. And that's really what we've seen. So yeah, the whole world is disrupted, but from an energy access point of view, we've been able to weather the storm pretty well.
What I thought was really interesting, Josh, and I don't know if you picked up on this on Friday's global call, and I cannot remember, I'm sorry, I cannot remember his name, but there was a COO who talked about an initiative that he has to bring the supply chain back to the US, right? And he has this really interesting approach where they're basically taking over an old abandoned steel mill and converting the technology to be able to produce, I guess, medical products that he previously sourced from overseas. So I think that'll be really interesting to see here over the next sort of 10 years, whether there'll be more of a focus on for certain products, right, that can be manufactured here and haven't traditionally because of the cost, whether we'll start to see that emerge in this country.
Yeah, agreed.
I think from my perspective, one of the problems when you hear about like a 72-month lead time, I mean, by the time you get a product, it's totally dated and there's new versions, right? That's crazy. The biggest thing I've been seeing out there and hearing a lot about is more the logistics, transportation side of it. We have people who can build components, who can build product, but you can't get it moved. So instead of doing things like by sea, companies are paying extreme amounts of money to move it by air. I mean, DHL must be just, I'd love to see the revenue figures because of that. But even then, there's backlogs. And then sometimes it's the minor components that totally break the ability to do production because you can't get those moved. And I don't know if it's going to get any better in the near future. At least internationally, it doesn't seem like it's improving a lot. I know down here in Florida, there's been a push to try to get some of the sea traffic moved over this direction because the West Coast ports are so backed up, and we actually have capacity here in Florida where I am. And there's been a push, but even doing that, that's a huge scheduling and change to companies in themselves. So I don't know how much that's going to work. But even inside the US, so we're looking at shortages of things, even if you're looking at pork products, beef products, things like that, where there's logistical problems even getting delivery because there's not enough capacity to do those deliveries. And it just seems like there's just no easy short-term solution, it seems.
Yeah, and it seems to be mostly related to the transitions, right? It's not the transportation itself, because once it gets on a train or a truck or a boat, I mean, the transportation is still the same, but a ship will arrive on the West Coast and then sit for 3 weeks before it can get unloaded. And then, okay, now the container's unloaded and the container sits for 3 weeks before it can get put on a train. And it's just insane sometimes.
Yeah. So how is this, Josh, how has this impacted how you think about your role as a COO in terms of sort of scenario planning and in terms of logistics? Are there things kind of coming out of this supply chain issue that have impacted directly your responsibilities as a COO?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I'm generally a quarter planner. So usually when I enter a new quarter, I'm planning the next quarter. But now I have to look a quarter beyond that. So I'm doing a lot of kind of call it risk buying or risk planning, and trying to kind of maintain some flexibility. I mean, everything we do is build to order. So having a ton of stock sitting in our warehouse doesn't do me a lot of good, because of all the custom work that we do. I don't know what we're going to be building in a year from now. So, it doesn't do me any good to future buy everything and get it here and sitting on our dock. So, a lot of it is like, okay, what components are we absolutely going to need let's make sure that I future buy those and have those ready at the factory so that we can use those when they're needed. But yeah, that's been the biggest challenge is, I've been in this role now for more than 15 years and have been doing quarter planning kind of since 2006. And now I'm looking at, what's the next quarter? What's the quarter after that? So it's kind of pushed out a little bit of the window that I'm looking at. So stretching my brain a little bit, that's probably my best answer.
And I'd just like to ask, so a lot of the trends that I've seen with some of the smaller business owners is they have gone back to a very traditional thought pattern with regard to product development, in the sense that they are bringing out products seasonally. So where there's options of product lines, they're really looking at, okay, we're going to have this seasonal campaign push in marketing, and we're just going to really create based on what we have. And so some of those things that they're doing is they're taking a seasonal approach based on what they have, and marketing it in such a way, but also to Chris's point, really leveraging local resources, which had been a big benefit to a lot of our local businesses that have struggled in the past with pricing competition. And so those are some of the trends that I think will continue, that were very old and traditional, will continue to come back forward in the US.
Yeah, I would love that. We have programs that take 3 years to get implemented, so we can't do anything seasonal.
Any other comments?
The only thing I can add to the conversation is on a personal level. Hope your dishwasher doesn't go out and that it's not made in Europe, because I just tried to order a replacement dishwasher for the house that went out 2 days before Thanksgiving, and it will be August of 2022 until they will be delivering.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
August 2022. So yeah, personal and professional life's impacted by supply chain.
That's a good point. It's not just our business, it's our homes.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about next question? It's the end of the year and COVID has changed the way we do business. We have a lot more people working either full-time from home or hybrid models, whatever. How are you tackling performance reviews? A lot of companies are doing that at the end of the year now. And I'm curious on the impact and the creativity, I think, that's necessary around that.
Yeah, I'm happy to start with that. We're in the middle of review process right now at NewView, and we are giving a lot more time for the reviews, a lot more discussion around performance, but broadly speaking. So, how people are thinking about their role. We all know that there's been a mass exodus of employees, and you don't want to lose the good ones for sure. And so, how do we make sure we're super in touch with their state of mind, how they're thinking about their role, their job? So it's the things that we would all normally do in situations where, this is what you're doing really well. This is where you need improvement. How can I help you to really improve upon your job? But then there's a whole number of other aspects to it that are quite interesting right now. So for example, I just had a review yesterday, and we're in a hybrid mode. So you can choose which days you come to the office, which ones you want to work from home. And this person typically works 2 or 3 days at the office and then the remainder at home, which is fine. And explained to me they can never see themselves coming to the office 5 days a week again. They just cannot. That's stressful to them. They did it for years and years, and now they're sitting there saying, how can I do this going forward? And I don't want to spend time in a car. And so it's I think the reviews are just much, much broader. They're more into aspects of wellness and thought and how people are really feeling about their job and what you can do, hopefully also to retain them, right? Because particularly the good employees, you really want to do the right things to keep them there, to let them know how appreciated they are, and make sure they know they're a big part of the team going forward. So it's an interesting time from that perspective. And I feel like I'm becoming a little bit more of a coach or therapist than I have been in the past, right? It's just half the time I think people just would like to speak and be listened to and be heard and know that somebody, is looking after them in their best interests.
Yep, completely agree there. What I've seen is it's changed the way that we look at policies that we've had in place for years and years and years, right? So you look at what's our PTO plan, right? What's our paid time off plan? Is it relevant now? Does it work? And the answer was no, right? It was like, the first thing that comes to mind sitting down individually with people is, how soon in the conversation does the word flexibility come up? Because that's the key now, right? Everybody wants some form of flexibility. And being in manufacturing, that can be a bit challenging, right? Because we need bodies in the building, moving hands, building product to keep revenue flowing. So, we started to look at really when it comes to employee reviews, one of the first questions I asked them is, are our policies working for you? And where are we not? Where are we not meeting the needs of you as a team member? Because I think, if an organization is not willing to look at that and make some changes to be flexible, 18 months from now, 2 years from now, they're going to be really struggling because the stories are going to come out, right? It's going to be, we're already starting to see companies that are kind of resorting back to what they believe is normal. And, hey, I've been quarantined for 2 weeks. My kids are out of school for 2 weeks. I need to take 2 weeks off. And employers are now saying, no, we have to let you go. Like, well, wait, hold on. This isn't over. So, I think that's one of the biggest transitions when it comes to, sitting down and really, when you're in a position as COO, you're a servant, right? You're here to serve the people that are here in the building. And, the only way to serve them is to ask them questions and listen.
Great point.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm trying out with one of the organizations that I'm working with is to kind of change the lexicon, but also change the strategy as it relates to how you best set up your employees for success. And I think there's traditionally been a challenge with just the word performance review for many people. Even the highest performers, I think, based on the research that I've read, even the highest performers, when they have a performance review, they tend to get very, very nervous about their accomplishments. And it just feels very much like you're being, put on a pedestal and tested. It's like that Harry Potter, you put that magical hat on your head, and the magical hat's going to tell you whether you've been good or bad, and you're going to Slytherin or whatever, Gryffindor. So we're trying to do something called career opportunity and success plan. It's very much a plan, and it's focused on career in terms of achievements, in terms of setting milestones, setting roadmaps, which still allows us, when you include the word opportunities, it still allows us the freedom to have difficult conversations, to talk potentially about things that maybe aren't going so well. But again, they're in the constructs of a sort of formal plan that kind of moves people forward. And I think what I'm seeing from the employees that I've been talking to is that there's this uncertainty as it relates to the world still. And so even understanding themselves how to define what their performance looks like in 2022, 2021, it's really, really challenging, but reframing it and saying, this is really a plan that will change, it will migrate. What's the frequency at which we want to review this plan? What does it look like? Is it Microsoft Word? Is it designed? Is it a series of emails? So we'll see how that nets out, but it's an interesting, I think, twist on the whole concept of performance reviews.
I think, Chris, if I can add to that too, I think you're right on the money. I think one of the challenges is that, the traditional annual review process, which is we have a review, we talk about how you did, now we set the goals for the year ahead. If you started January 1st of 2021 with a set of goals, that's not partially out the window because things changed. And when you look at 2022, I can't go in and say, here's what I want you to do over the next year, because I can have some of that. But at the same time, the world's changing, the work situation's changing, everything is in motion. So it's very difficult to say over the next year, here's your concrete list of things to do. It almost has to be more of a quarterly review. I'm a proponent of kind of the EOS model, which is You have your annual review process, but you have quarterly check-ins. More, I call them non-HR discussions. They're informal. Here's where we are, where we're going. The annual review process, that's an HR discussion, but let's talk every quarter. But that's becoming more the driver in my mind around how we evaluate people and where they need to go than an annual review in itself now.
Mhm. One of the things that I brought to my firm kind of dovetails off of continuous growth, self-growth, and self-motivation is actually a wellness target. And so it's really a self-evaluation. And so it's kind of an accountability check-in. And really what it is it approaches and it says, okay, when we start the year, I want you to pick a wellness thing for yourself, whether that's a meditation app, whether that's doing a fitness routine, whether that's whatever that is for you, pick that. And then we're going to check in and say, hey, did you commit to that? And if they're not able to commit to that due to work, then we partner to say, well, where can we add this 15, 20, 30 minutes to make sure that you're self-caring and making sure that you're committed to yourself. I think in 2020, there was a heavy emphasis on behavioral health. But to Josh's example earlier, some of that has been taken back. And that's where kind of a lot of people are looking to shift to really look for organizations that are mindful of who they are as people, not just because of the work they do.
No, Maria, that's actually the perfect segue because I was going to bring that topic up. James mentioned it as well, which is the whole thing around wellness. And that is really a big issue now. And especially so much, a lot of people that aren't working from home or used to working from home, I think are often like, oh, this sounds really great. But then they find that's actually very stressful in many ways. Work-life separation is a little more difficult. It sounds great. Okay, it's nice. You get a benefit. I don't have to go sit in rush hour traffic and get jazzed from dealing with all that under pressure. But then the other side is being able to step away from work. And I'm terrifyingly guilty of this. Work-life balance is something I've never done well with. But in working from home, I think that's actually been a struggle. I know I talk to people who are like, please, we've got to open the office. I want to go in. I don't want to be there 5 days a week, but 2 or 3 days a week, I need that separation from home.
I think this is probably the most important issue for COOs right now is focusing and understanding the complexity and the responsibility and the opportunities to bring an increasing acknowledgement and awareness and focus on wellness in the workplace. Because it's not only an issue in terms of how it's impacting employees, but obviously your employees are the people that make the magic happen. And so you have to understand the implications and sort of the trickle down impact on performance, productivity, culture, talent acquisition, all of those aspects. And I think increasingly COOs who are comfortable in general in juggling a lot of balls are having to add one more ball to the mix, right? In terms of having a focus on digging a little bit deeper in terms of really getting to the core of what's driving some of the problems from a wellness perspective, and then being able to reach out to their CEOs or their partners to say, these are some of the tactics that we need to put in place. These are some of the things that we need to think about from a mission perspective. These are some of the things we need to think about from a compensation perspective if we're really going to take this business to the next level. What makes this complex, I think, also, and going back to this concept of juggling of balls, is that most of us aren't psychiatrists or psychologists, right? We're talented. We've had exposure to a sort of broad plethora of aspects within business, but this is really new for us. So I think, as an add-on to my comment, I think what I am finding really rewarding about my collaboration in the COO Forum is just understanding how other COOs are navigating the challenge of wellness in the workplace.
I think too, Chris, to go even deeper in that a little bit, one of the challenges that we face from a COO perspective is how do we even train like our managers, our supervisors down the line to watch for warning signs too. Watch for people that are burning out, people that aren't maybe taking wellness seriously enough, and even addressing that, because that gets kind of personal where you want to talk to someone and say, look, you seem more stress than usual. I'm concerned. How do you do that without violating privacy? This is really a complicated problem.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex. And there are legal implications, and there are moral implications, and there are
Right.
ethical implications. But at the same time, despite those challenges, again, it is, I think, the most important thing a COO can be focused on right now.
And we also would encourage our members, including ourselves, that policy applies to our level as well. You know, there has to be some wellness. The COO job in particular is incredibly stressful at times. And then we also must be setting an example at that level of following good wellness and demonstrating to others that it's okay to go out to lunch and take a bicycle ride. That's my stress relief sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Chris really hit something on the head there. We're talking about like adding a new ball, right? We're trying to keep balls in the air. But imagine if that ball is shaped different than the rest of them and it's heavier than the rest of them. How difficult does that then become to keep them all still in the air? Because I think, that really is what I consider a superpower of really good COOs. And it reminds me of a quote, a Stephen Covey quote, where he says, you can't be efficient with people. And as operations leaders, we spend so much time and effort in efficiencies in all other aspects of the business. And then we have to set that mindset completely aside and become psychologists and become people-centric and become how can we be effective and leave efficiencies completely out the window, right? And I think, when we're talking about that recognizing, it's spending time in the world of others, because then you can start to see, hey, this pattern's a little different. Their attitude's a little different. Something is up. And you can't pick up on that unless you spend time in other people's worlds, right? And I have 2 little kids at home, and I think about that all the time. Like, I get the absolute pleasure of going home every night and spending a little time crawling around on the floor with my 4-year-old son, and just experiencing the world from his point of view every day. And if something is different in his world, I pick up on it right away. Hey, this isn't normal, his normal behavior. Something is up. And I think that same way when I'm walking around my facility, right? I don't want to call people to my office and, hey, let's have a talk, because then it feels like they're coming to the principal's office, right? I want to go and sit and walk around in production and sit down and use my hands and help somebody and really get to know them, because then if something changes, I'm going to pick up on it, and it's going to build that rapport that they're going to feel comfortable enough to be a little bit vulnerable to share something with me that they may not have before.
I think too, Josh, that it's driving from the COO perspective that, it's not just about that you're seeking that perfections, that operational excellence. But right now you got to be kind of flexible. We need to mentally think about things maybe a little differently, and maybe we're not going to achieve that optimal condition that could be done, because in doing so, we create stress on the organization, or with the great resignation out there, we lose good people. So I think we have to retrain our own thinking a little bit, into a more flexible model than maybe we would have done a couple of years ago. So I'm curious, kind of on the next topic, from your perspectives, we all are from different geographical regions. And I'm curious things that your chapter or you're hearing in your chapter that are really benefits, or what are people saying that the forum has really done to help them? Let's see, I'll go around the room for this one. Chris?
Well, it's very different between New York and DC, primarily because my members in New York tend to come from a broader spectrum of industries, whereas Washington tends to be focused on government or nonprofit or tech. The issues are similar, though, in that I think what everyone seems to be struggling with is talent acquisition and retention. That seems to be the #1 issue in both New York and in DC. And finding and generating a strategy that approaches this challenge of talent acquisition and strategy that is broad enough that it can be inclusive of the employee's mindset, but equally recognizes that the landscape is too broad. There never is going to be one solution that is the perfect solution for every employee, because every employee has a different sort of framework. So trying to figure out, and no one's nutted this, right? I mean, even today, I think I saw that, I don't know who it was, Apple or Google or somebody said, yeah, our January plans, we're throwing them out the door, right? Everyone is trying to figure this out. But I think what is different about New York, I think, is this recognition that the long tail impact of this change in terms of how it impacts the city and the surroundings of which they live, it's going to be much broader in terms of long scale impact, just because of the drop in corporate real estate taxes. And COOs are really aware that the next 5 years in terms of the funding for social services, how it's going to impact the New York City community is going to be fundamentally a challenge. DC, again, it's much more about how can I continue to build strategies, frameworks that allow me to achieve my mission in the midst of, again, such uncertainty and such a challenge with attracting talent. So those are the two primary differences.
Thanks, Chris. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, so I can give two perspectives. So I'm a member of the local chapter here in Indianapolis of the COO Forum, and Indianapolis is an interesting market here in the Midwest, because really once you get outside of Indianapolis, things, even from early in 2020, I mean, by the time we got to like May, June, once you got outside of Indy, you couldn't even tell that anything was going on. I mean, people weren't wearing masks. It was like, meh, it'll be fine. And, the interesting thing that I found is of all the constituencies that we have in the Indy chapter, there was only two companies that were associated with the Indy chapter that went full remote. Everybody else kind of kept office hours, kept going to the office, and it was really, there seemed to be a pretty big split between small business and big business. So a lot of the big organizations, the big global conglomerates that are members in Indy, obviously they shut down, and much of that was political, to be honest. It was, hey, we kind of need to do this because that's what everybody else is doing, and this is the right thing to do. And then, I mean, for us, being a small manufacturing firm, it was, what can we do to keep the doors open? Can we justify that we are an essential business? Can we, what do we need to do? And, we did some flex scheduling kind of things. And that's really where the local chapter of the COO Forum came into view, because it was, hey, what are you guys doing here in Indianapolis to make this work? And, we were able to bounce some ideas, off of each other that, that really helped kind of, okay, I feel like I'm making the right decision here. Because then, I go putting on my other hat, being in the global chapter, there we pull from everywhere. So, hearing the messages that were coming out of the both the West Coast and the East Coast, where full cities were completely shut down, that was just foreign to us in Indianapolis, because that just didn't really happen here. So, hearing even now where companies are considering how do we go back to work, we're like, man, that was a discussion 18 months ago here. Like, what? How is it still a discussion? So I think that's the interesting part of the COO Forum from a global perspective, is it really broadens, that COO role. And for me, I can give somebody who's just now starting to talk about, hey, we're going to start switching to hybrid. We're going to start getting people back in the office. Like, we did that 18 months ago. So I can share my experience. Here's kind of the things we experienced. And that was before vaccinations and masks and, all those things. So just being able to share some of that and give some insight into the, this is what really happened here in our organization when we brought everybody back in the office. That's really been a huge benefit from the global perspective.
Thanks, Josh. Maria?
So the biggest benefit I think that has been experienced at the Atlanta chapter is really fellowship. I always tell people there is only one COO at most companies. I'd say 99.9%, right? And so where do you go to have a peer? I mean, you go to a company, there are three accountants. You go to a company, there are four receptionists, but there's only one COO. So the biggest value has been fellowship. Although we touch all size organizations, many different industries, we're all about operations. And I think sometimes we find continuity on challenges, but sometimes we learn from different industries as well. With regard to fellowship, we pick a topic that's hard hitting for most of us, and we bring in somebody to educate us. We research together, and we build our education of that topic for one another, whether it's strategy, whether it's talent acquisition, whether it's professional branding. That's what we do, and we do it together. Um, I've had the benefit of seeing deep relationships come and other peer relationships be built based on fellowship, and so I think that's the biggest benefit of the COO Forum. And we're always hitting everything emerging because guess what? We're the innovators of execution. We have to figure it out, and so I think it's always good and fun times at the COO Forum.
Great. James?
Yeah, so being a member of the Silicon Valley chapter, as you can imagine, most of the companies are tech oriented at some level or another. So it's very concentrated in that way. So like Josh had mentioned, I attend a number of the global COO forums, and I really enjoy that because the local chapter allows me to really know and understand what's happening here in the Valley and how people are feeling, but then the global chapter allows me to see it more broadly, a much broader perspective, a much greater variety of industries. And so those two really, contrast for me, and it's just great to get those additional perspectives. One of the things that we talk about often is just how important it is to have those local connections. And so much happens not only during the COO Forum, but outside the COO Forum. Right. So you're able to build a really deep and rich network of people in your community. And, I've had a number of times where, we've gone and grabbed coffee or grabbed lunch and have really been able to share some ideas, pen to paper kind of thing. Really had really great experiences. So there's a lot that happens in the forum, but there's also a lot that happens outside.
I would have to echo a lot of what everybody has said. I know for me, I joined the COO Forum when I was the CEO of a mobile software company. And I had a lot of different challenges with a global footprint and a lot of things going on, fast growth and things. And I was kind of went out looking for people to talk to and see if anybody had the same problems I did. And the COO Forum was like, wow, I'm not alone in the world. And I really enjoyed the camaraderie that developed too. I think that's a big thing for me is we do more outside of the COO Forum than in. It's a peer group. There's people that we are in touch with. You get to know, who and what business and where in the world may have a certain thing going on or have faced challenges and you're facing it, who to call. And that's been really great. I love hearing different solutions or different approaches to the same problem. I'm the kind of guy that's, if there's a challenge out there that needs addressed, I like 3 solutions. I don't really like to go in and say, this is it. I like to hear different ideas. And the COO Forum has really provided that. So I have one final question for you, and we'll go around the room again, but what motivated you to become a COO? And we'll start with Josh on this one.
I accidentally ended up here. I've been in manufacturing pretty much my entire adult life, starting on the factory floor and running machines. And then I was always just curious, right? It was how curious can I be? What else can I learn? And really that turned into being the go-to guy most of the time. And I started to be the go-to guy for the guy at the top. And that's kind of been a pattern. My last several positions, it was, even just at 18 years old, working factory midnights, the supervisor found that I had, good muscle memory. So when I learned to run a machine, I could learn to run the rest of them. So, he was like, hey, I'm just going to have you be the guy I can plug in when somebody doesn't show up. So even going back to those days, and then, working through, drafting, and then quality assurance, and then learning procurement, and then learning, engineering and design development, and then learning my way through sales and marketing. And then, oh yeah, I guess I can dabble in a little bit of everything. So I may as well take on this role. So yeah, I think it was just accidentally I ended up here, and I think it's going all right.
How about you, Maria?
Yeah, so I really function as a fractional COO. It really started out of word of mouth and passion. So I've always had a knack for figuring things out and creating new ways of doing things, and kind of being like the organizer of things, if you would, and the fixer. And so because I've been doing that for a long time, I ended up doing it for a few executives, and it just organically turned into a business for me. And so I've been doing it for, we'll just say, over 5 years. I won't say how old I really am. But it's been really a passionate joy, and I just love operations. And I tell anybody who's interested in being that role, operations is a really way to stretch the mind to do many things concurrently, and really think outside of the box. So if you have a person who, indeed, if you're a person who's considering the role or considering operations, it's really, if you're the person that really likes to think outside of the box and make a Rubik's Cube at the same time, then the COO role is really for you.
That may be the best analogy I've ever heard for their job. That's awesome. How about you, James?
Yeah, so my background is more accounting and finance. So I'm a CPA, CMA, a chartered global management accountant. And just in my role, it sounds like it's pretty common, right? People stumble into doing really good at something really well. And then the organizations are, hey, there's this great opportunity for you to do more and really impact a greater number of people. We talked about this earlier, being sort of having a servant's heart in this role, which is really important, and ended up becoming a COO about 16 years ago. And you have your hands in everything. Maria mentioned it's also lonely, by the way, right? Because there's only one of you, but you have your hands in everything. You get to see the entire organization beginning to end, start to finish. And it's from that perspective, I've loved every aspect of it, because you're just so involved, so engaged, but you do have a number of balls up in the air. And it just sort of happened to be for me. And I can't see myself doing anything else, as strange as that sounds.
How about you, Chris?
Mine is just serendipity. I started in a new role back in 2003. My first 7 or so years of my career was focused on technology. I moved to New York and founded some startup agencies in the tech space, and I took on a new job as really the director of technology, CIO role. On the second day on the job, the CEO called me into his office and said, "So what we really hired you to do was get our house in order, because I want to sell the business." And so I was basically brought into the operations capacity. I had to learn about overhead recovery rates and debits and credits, and what you should pay for, square foot rental in Manhattan. And for me, it was just this opportunity to just learn. And it was just so exciting. And every day I would just learn something new about what makes a business successful. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with how all the puzzle pieces come together, but more importantly, just every day on the job is an opportunity to learn something new. And you never know what you're going to face on a day-to-day basis. It could be you win a new client, or a piece of technology fails, or your lead salesperson decides to go to your competitor, or whatever it is. Every day there's something unique and challenging that you have to figure out. But again, from this broad scale perspective of how all the puzzle pieces fit together.
Yeah, I think and for me, it was more that I've always been a good team builder, a jack of all trades, and can multitask. And I was the guy, from very early in my career, my late teens, when I was doing software development, I was the guy that when everything was going wrong, it was like, "Oh, call Tracy, he'll fix it. He'll get it fixed." I've been the go-to guy. "Oh, this is a disaster. All the client's attorneys on the phone, get Tracy on a plane." That was my job. And so it was kind of a natural thing to move more in that operations role, to make multiple things happen across an organization. And I think that moving to what you would call a COO for me, when I did that, was more, I read Rocket Fuel, and I looked at what Mark Winters defined as a visionary and an integrator. And I read the integrator profile and I went, wait a minute, that's me. That's who I am. That's my personality. I'm not the visionary, I'm the integrator. And that really kind of cemented my view of the COO role. Is you've got the guys out there that are the visionaries, and they have 100 ideas a minute, most of which are nonsense, and you're the guy behind the scenes that has to weed that down and put some discipline around it. So that was my view. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time today. It's been a really good conversation, and look forward to speaking to all of you again in the near future.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Crazy.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.